because you can get these real long rubber gloves. These are like as long as up to your elbow, okay? Then you stick the glove in the pipe. Now I'm going to show you on a smaller pipe and glove, but here's your pipe, here's your glove. You'd stick it in there, and that would go into the box, into the steel box. And then you take your glove, and you go like this with it. See? You tape it around here, right? Now this is permanent. You can stick your hand into the thingy, and you'll automatically be put inside your glove. Then that way, once you put everything inside your steel box, you can put your hands into the holes, into the gloves, clean everything down, and now you have a permanent, it's permanently sealed. And if you cleaned it, then there's nothing in there. And when you open your agar, you're going to be safe. And I wanted to mention about this pipe and, the glove thing. When you size this up, make sure that the pipe is big enough for your hand to fit through it in your arm, but also make sure it's small enough that your glove will go over the, when you put it inside and you try to roll it around the pipe so you can tape it to the pipe. Make sure that it's small enough for your gloves, or your gloves are big enough to do that. Another thing I wanted to bring up was these pieces of wood. I think I said you 1/4 inch. They should probably be 1/2 inch. That way between both of them you have a whole inch of wood, and when you slide your pipe through it, your pipe's going to be only 2 inches or 3 inches longer than that, but that is enough wood where the pipe isn't going to be all flimsy, you know what I mean? So now you got your parafilm around the petri dishes, and you put in your spores, and this is what will happen. After a couple of days, you'll have little spots of spores growing, and when they have sex, not always is it this lined, look like a root system like this. Sometimes it's fluffy. Okay, so it has a couple different types of way to grow. So don't be fooled. But once they have sex, they'll start making a different type of growth. You'll have the myCELLYum, right? And then the myCELLYum will keep growing. Now you don't have to do this, but if you want a single strain of mushroom, then you want to, once this starts growing, you take a piece of the stringy stuff, you move it to its own petri dish. Then that will just replicate itself, and you'll have a more pure, mushroom. Why even put them on the plates? Well, because spores, they could have contamination in them. This is basically to get rid of contamination, to make sure that it's a pure myCELLYum with no contamination. That's the whole reason for the plates, the petri dishes. I also wanted to mention I have an old video called Biolab of John Black Super Chemist. If you want to check it out, I'll put a link to this in the description below. It's nothing great. It's just showing 20-year-old stuff that I had that I, was basically had in storage in the basement for a long time. Now, there are 2 reasons to use petri dishes. Okay, one is to germinate so that they can have sex and isolate the myCELLYum. The second reason is to make sure things are sterile. Okay, this is the way this is the way that you can get rid of all the contamination and make sure that you have pure myCELLYum, no contamination. Now, at what temperature do you want to have these at? 80 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't care what anyone says. Put it at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. You can have it between 70 and 80 Fahrenheit. That'll work perfectly fine. The reason why I say 80 degrees Fahrenheit is because that temperature promotes mold growth and germination. Okay? And it will grow a lot faster at 80 degrees. You might say, well, why do you want it to promote mold? Because this is the time. This is what the whole thing of wasting your time putting these in plates is to see if there's any mold. So you want to put it as hot as you can. I mean 80 degrees, not hotter. 80 is fine. That way, if any mold does grow, you can pick out your stuff and put it in a new plate and leave the contaminants there and throw this plate away. That's the whole reason for doing the plate. You want You actually want mold growth if there's any mold in there, so you can get it out of there and isolate your stuff so it's pure. Now when you transfer it to grain, you take the temp down to 75 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay? You keep in mind, even then, you can 70 to 80 degrees is fine. But if you want it the best temperature, you're going to want to take it down a notch. You know, once you get it into the grains, you take it down to 75, 77. Now I wanted to bring up, if you have this steel air box and you do the pipe in the holes instead of just having holes where you stick your hand in, you actually put the pipe in there and you put the gloves on the pipe and you have a gasket on here for the lid. If you do all that, what you can do if you really want to do it the right ways, you do your spawn in jars, right, your grains. You put it into the steel air box, right? You clean everything off, put it in a steel air box. Then the next day you do your agar. You sterilize it, you clean, and then you put it in the box, right? And then you have your plates in there and you close it up again, and then you wash everything down. Now you can pour your agar in a closed system that you just cleaned and sanitized. You can pour your agar, let the agar just sit in that box, never open it up. Grow your mycelium as much as you need, and then open your jar. Before you open your jars, you know, every time you do go into the box, even though you're not opening the lid, you still wipe everything down. So you wipe everything down, you open, when you're ready to spawn, you open up your lids to your jars, and you cut your mycelium and your plates and put it into the jars and close the jars up and let them sit there for like 3 days. And then you'll have to move them into another steel air box that also has a gasket, but this time you put 2-inch holes going around, and you cover that with microporous tape. That allows no contamination to get in, but it allows airflow to go, you know, so you can get oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. But you can see you'll never have to open this closed system. You know, pouring your agar, growing your mycelium, putting it, spawning it. You'll never have to open that box until a few days after you spawn, and you'll know that that'll guarantee it'll guarantee low contamination. You know, you always have contamination in your spores, and so you can always, you know, end up with contamination. But this will keep it down to a bare minimum. Now, a lot of people, they fill up their petri dishes too much. You really, with a 100 millimeter petri dish, which is the average size, you only need about 10 to 20 milliliters. 10 to 20 milliliters of agar solution. Most people put 30 in, and if you're going to store them for, you know, like a month or something, then yeah, put 30. But otherwise, you don't really need that much. I put probably about 30 in, because it's hard to put just 10 or 20. And it's better to have too much than too little. Okay, the last thing I wanted to go over were jars. You know, plastic bags, like garbage bags and stuff like that, usually not sterile but sanitized, because you use heat and you know, pressure to make these things. And that's why I suggested this. They're kind of like little, you fill them with, I guess, ketchup or condiments or whatever. They're just little tiny cups. They have lids. I've never tried it, so I don't know. It's just a suggestion. But maybe those could be used for petri dishes, you know what I mean, disposable ones. Another idea is these type of mason jars. But the thing is, you don't want to get a tall jar because you're going to have to be cutting stuff out of it, and it's just easier to get something small. This would be better, but you can see, you can't see through the glass. It's got this, like, those X's on it, you know what I mean, indentions. You can see how clear that is. You can see right through that. So you'd want it clear. The best idea, if you don't have money, is to get someone who has a baby and use baby food jars. They're clear. They're just the same size as this. and they're free if you know someone who has a baby. To buy these are actually kind of expensive, these little jars and these jars. I mean, if you're going to buy them for petri dishes, I suggest you just buy 10 glass petri dishes. I just bought 10 glass petri dishes for $30 on eBay. That's $3 a plate. And these are like $2. I mean, you're going to pay $2 for something that's not perfect. I mean, might as well pay an extra $1 and get something that is perfect, a petri dish. But you want it to be wide. The thing about these is they're not that wide, okay? And I did find one mason jar that was great. Well, here's a picture of that tiny one. And this is a comparable. See how it's got a wider, it's got like this size, if I had a quart jar, that would be the size of it. I mean, the size is almost the size of a petri dish. And it's short, it's actually, I think, shorter than this one I showed you. You can't really see in the bottom part where it's that knobby part comes out, but that's where the agar would be. You would fill that up with agar, and then this curvy part is what makes it great because you can see right in onto everything. You know what I mean? Whereas these, they're not that good because you even when they have the clear glass, because they don't have that, you know, angled part, so you can see all the way into everything great. You almost get an above. So that's why petri dishes are great, because you can look above. That's what you want to do, is be above it, not at an angle. But my point is, this actually cost about $3 a jar to get it. So if you're going to do that, you might as well just buy the petri dish. Buy 10 of them. You only need about 10. You don't even need that many, really. Now, if you're going to make your steel box and you're not going to put a pipe in it, you're just going to cut holes in for your hands and wear gloves that you spray down, you know, sanitizer or whatever, and you just have them open, and you don't have a gasket maybe in the top here, but it's still a steel air box, you know what I mean? You may want to get something like this, a smaller, like a kind of shoebox size clothespin or whatever, shoe bin, I guess, and then you can put your plate, sanitize the box, and have it already in your still box. Then when you're done pouring your stuff, you know, let it sit there till it solidifies, but then stack them up in this other box, and then put the lid on it. If I can use these, I'm going to try these out first. But if these work out, I'm going to try Ziploc baggies to see if you can grow spawn instead of using glass jars, you know what I mean, to grow your spawn. Why can't you just use a Ziploc baggie? You know what I mean? And tape it up with micro pour tape, so it, you know, can breathe. Well, I mean, they should be sterile, right? Garbage bags are, I know garbage bags are somewhat sterile. So why wouldn't a Ziploc bag be? Oh well, we'll see. And when you use jars, you know, you don't have to have mason jars. You can, like, I got this Hershey's fudge. These are 350 milliliter jars, by the way. This is probably about 700 or 600 maybe. I wanted you to keep in mind, you know, growing mushrooms really from start to beginning is easy. Anyone can do it. I mean, it's not hard. You have a lot of leeway with stuff where the mushroom will survive. It's almost impossible to fail. What makes it hard is keeping out the contamination. That's really the only thing that's hard. And when you do your plates and you do your spawning into these jars or whatever you spawn in, that's actually easy too. Trying to keep out contamination is relatively easy. It's not until you get to fruiting, the last couple weeks, that's when it's hard to keep out contamination. Okay, that's the only time. Up until then, it's easy pie. It's easy cheesy. You can skimp on half of the stuff I'm saying and still be able to do it. You know, keep the contamination out. But once you get to the fruiting, that's where it's kind of hard because you have to open it up to the atmosphere more. Always remember, science is great.